Okay, it's 7:01. I'm calling the meeting with San Leandro City Council to order. I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you're able to.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Madam Clerk, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Aguilar.
Present.
Councilmember Azevedo.
Present.
Councilmember Bolt.
Present.
Councilmember Bowen. Councilmember Viveros Walton is absent. Vice Mayor Simon.
Present.
Mayor Gonzalez.
Present.
Please note, Councilmember Viveros Walton is absent.
Okay. So, council members, I am pulling item 8A, the appeal of the Planning Commission's approval for a conditional use permit to build an 80-foot high wireless telecommunication facility at 440 Peralta Avenue from tonight's agenda to be heard on Tuesday instead, Tuesday, January 21st at that council meeting to allow for analysis of a letter by the appellant's legal counsel that was received on Sunday in support of the appeal. More broadly, the city of San Leandro conducts orderly meetings to fulfill its mandate. Discriminatory statements or conduct that would potentially violate the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964 and or the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, California Penal Codes sections 403 or 415 are per se disruptive to meeting and will not be tolerated. Please see the City Council Handbook and City Council Meeting Rules of Decorum for more information. Madam Clerk, your announcement.
Thank you, Mayor. If you would like to make a public comment during the meeting, you can do so in person or via Zoom. If you are present at the meeting, please complete a speaker card and submit it to the city clerk before the item is presented. If you wish to participate in public comment via Zoom, you can use the raise your hand tool when the item is called. During the public comment session, speakers will be invited to speak and will have a set time to share their comments. A countdown timer will appear for their convenience, and when the time is up, the microphone will be muted. All raised hands outside of public comment will be lowered to avoid confusion. Once public comment is opened, hands may be raised to speak. There will be a 30-minute window for public comments, which will take place under item 7, public comments, as per the published agenda. After this time is up, the council will proceed with the rest of the meeting's agenda. If you have not had the opportunity to speak during the initial 30-minute period, there will be another chance to do so after item 12, city council reports. Thank you.
Okay, moving to item number 3, City Attorney. Is there anything to report out of closed session?
Thank you, Mayor. There are no reportable actions that were taken in closed session, but direction was provided to staff.
Today for item 4 of our agenda, there are no recognitions, so we'll move to the consent calendar. So this is an opportunity for our council members to pull anything that they'd like to pull. Otherwise, I would gladly take a motion. Councilmember Bowen. Got a motion from Bowen.
I had my hand raised, Mayor.
Second from Councilmember Bolt.
Mayor, my hand is raised.
Okay,
my hand has been raised.
That's okay. So I've got a motion on this item, and I've got a second on this item. So at this point in time, we will take questions or public comments. Would you like to pull an item?
Correct. That's why I raised my hand. Yes.
Okay.
So I would like to
hold on just a second. Okay, so I've gotten clarification from our parliamentarian. Despite the fact that we have a motion and a second, you have the opportunity to pull an item. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to pull item 5D. And the only items within 5D I'd like to pull are the nomination for the Alameda County Transportation Commission and the Airpoint Community Noise Management Forum. So those are the only two motions within item 5D I'd like to pull.
Okay, so 5D is my motion. And so we would have to have a vote to segment that. And so I am not approving that we segment out anything out of the motion. So would you like to pull the motion as a whole?
Clarification question. If we pull the motion as a whole, can we leave the discussion just for those two items I had brought up? And take a vote on just those items I brought up?
I will not accept a segmentation or a bifurcation of the item.
May I ask why not?
You may ask.
Why not?
This is not a discussion. This is a consent calendar. Would you like to pull it or not pull it?
I'd like to pull it.
Okay. Any other items that folks would like to pull? Okay. We will now move to public comment on this item.
Mr. Mayor, we have one hand up online and we have 2 comments in person.
Let's begin online, please. Okay, and so again, online, raise your hands. Let's get your hands raised because when I close online public comment, we will be done there and we'll come back to in person.
Okay, and I would also like to clarify, because I see one hand up, that this is only for the consent calendar. This is not general public comment. Thank you.
Please proceed online.
Douglas Spalding, you may unmute yourself. Douglas Spalding, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you. Happy New Year. You can probably tell I'm back teaching because my voice is already hoarse on the first day. I'd like to speak to item 5G. This item has been long in coming. And I'd like to offer a little perspective from my job in the San Lorenzo Unified School District, which has gone through a similar transition to district elections. You know, in the city of San Leandro, we had 2 districts where council people ran unopposed. Now, the people that ran and are still on our city council are fine people, but it does reflect the difficulty sometimes of getting people to run for office. And one of the obstacles when you have citywide elections is, of course, that it costs more money. For example, when one candidate has $120,000 in the bank, it's a little hard to be competitive in that race. Same thing was happening in San Lorenzo, where, you know, I mean, we were just struggling to get people to run for the board. And the San Lorenzo proactively decided to go through this transition. Nobody threatened to sue, but they saw the handwriting on the wall. And the result is that, like, the longest tenured person on the school board, who was Penny Peck, then had to run against someone who wound up in her same district, and she didn't win, which that's too bad. But we did end up getting a new person, a new and wonderful parent, Dorothy Lee, which would have never happened had we not gone to district elections. So I think it is incumbent on the city to move in this direction ASAP. And as part of this, we should study the current districts and see if they are aligned.
Thank you. Your time is up. Whitney, you may unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I also want to be another voice to support the district-wide elections. And I agree with what Douglas was saying. And I also just feel like it's an important thing for equality and for the reasons that he mentioned about the costliness of district-wide elections, and also because of just diversity issues as well. So I hope that you will take up this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam
Melissa
Clerk,
Ditano, you may unmute yourself.
if you could
Please
please
hold.
make sure that the record reflects the arrival of our council member. Thank you.
Please note, Councilmember Viveros Walton is in attendance. Melissa Ditano, you may unmute yourself. Melissa?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Good evening. My name's Melissa DiTano, and I am a member of, or I am a resident in District 1, and I'm also calling in support of district elections for all of the reasons that Douglas and Whitney shared, but also to add, in the past, I have volunteered for a city council person and helped with their campaign, specifically creating canvassing maps, and in that process learned just how big our city is and how many countless volunteer hours it would take for one campaign to reach every voter or every household in San Leandro. And I think this will make our city council more accessible to a broader range of people, which I think will be very helpful in making our city council even more representative of the districts, and um, have different perspectives that are representing us. So I do encourage you to consider moving to district elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, there is no more public comment online, so we will
So-
go in person.
We'll close online public comment and begin in-person public comment.
Darlene Evans?
I thought there was going to be more explanation before that I talked at public comments. And I believed that it was B, and it wasn't what you have been talking about. I'm old and I'm 77, and I appreciate that you put the agenda and you posted outside, and it scrolls. And when people just refer to E or G or something like that, it's not the topic name. A topic name would be very helpful.
Thank you. Craig Williams?
Hi, my name is Craig Williams. I support district elections. What's interesting about this issue is the history of at-large elections. They were introduced in the South by the upper-class wing of the KKK. So if anybody supports the KKK, you might have an argument for at-large elections. But throughout the South, they had at-large elections in almost every city, and there was very little Black representation in the South. And in the Southwest, actually, the Hispanic community faced similar problems. In San Leandro, I think we adopted at-large elections in the 50s, and it was an effort to discriminate against Hispanics, Asians, Portuguese, and African Americans. Also, district elections gives candidates the ability to talk to people door to door, face to face, where they can engage in conversations with voters. There's actually a lot of data about how face-to-face contact is something like 6 or 7 times as effective as mailers. So, if we could enhance our democracy through district elections, it'll be a step in the right direction. And also, we can have at-large seats. The city I come from, New Bedford, Massachusetts, they have 8 district seats. There's 100,000 people in the city, and 5 at-large seats. In a lot of cities, you have a strategy where, somebody does a good job as a district councilor, then they run at large. And if they do a good job as an at-large councilor, then they run for mayor. So, it's something we should consider.
Thank you. Your time is up. John Minot Schwartz?
Hi, good evening. Happy New Year. I wanted to speak also in support of the consent calendar's move to district-based elections. I think on principle, I think it is more democratic. I think it is a benefit to the city that it makes it easier for grassroots candidates to start from nothing and succeed with a smaller community doing the voting. I did want to additionally point out something that I found confusing in the item. That was the proposal for a citywide election to put the change up or down in 2026. Because fundamentally, we know that, or I think many people know that this is up because there is a state law that makes it easier to sue cities and to push them to adopt this change if they're large enough and diverse enough without going through an expensive lawsuit. And it is effectively the state saying we think district-based elections are better and more equitable. And as a result, if it violates state law to have our current system, or if we would likely lose a case, which for this purpose, let's call it the same thing in practice, then I don't know what the function of a citywide election is, because I think the measure would succeed. I think the city would like it. But if it fails, then A, what legal effect does that have? I don't think it changes the legal status of our current system. And B, does it make the council feel compelled to defend a system that will lose in court and that could cost the city a great deal of money? So I would suggest, I do thank you for moving forward tonight, but do suggest that there be some more discussions with the city attorney on what exact force this ratification vote would have, what would happen in the scenario of yes versus no. And I think it is possible. I think many cities with an at-large system in their charters have adopted the change by resolution only because it's complying with state law. Thank you.
Time is up. Mr. Mayor, there's no more public comments?
Okay, so close public comment. Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, let's vote. And so for the benefit of Councilmember Votis Walton, item D was pulled by Councilmember Simon.
Vice Mayor Simon, your vote?
Just to confirm, this is not a vote on item 5D?
Correct. The motion is to approve consent calendar without 5D.
Okay, my vote is yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes unanimous, 7-0. Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Bolt, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Vice Mayor Simon, yes. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. And Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes.
At this point in time, we'll go to item 5D. Vice Mayor, you pulled the item.
Okay, thank you. Yes, item 5D, the positions of Alameda County Stop Waste. First, I'll talk about that one. I would like to request to remain on that committee. I took the classes from the censorship in order to continue on my committees. I have experience with recycling and waste management with my time on Orloma Sanitary, so I'm very experienced with it. I do have institutional knowledge, and I'm just getting to know my colleagues on Alameda County Stop Waste and getting to know the other cities. And I am starting a leadership role on Alameda County Stop Waste. I was the second vice president of the recycling board, and I would like to continue my leadership role to represent San Leandro. The other comment I would like to make is that I was the only one, I understand, pulled off of a committee. And to me, this feels a bit like a continuation of the censorship fallout. So I do have a bad taste in my mouth from that. And lastly, I'd like to say, moving forward in 225 on council, I'm really hoping we as a council can work together and build a really positive working relationship. And one thing that was not done in this process is I was not reached out to by Councilmember Bowen or by the mayor regarding being pulled from this position. And I think it's important for us as a council to work together to be courteous. And I think that would have been a really nice thing to do, is to reach out before I was pulled. And just a side note, my son just made Eagle Scout, and it might sound kind of corny, but I do believe in the Scout law. And that is an important part of the Scout law, is being courteous. And I think we should do that amongst council members. So those are my reasoning. I would like to remain on Alameda County Stop Waste for those following items.
Do I have a motion? Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor. I too was shocked to read the list and see what had happened in regards to the move of Councilmember Simon from Stop Waste, and to hear that there was no communication other than just an appointment is disgraceful in my sense, and also left a bad taste in my mouth. I think we're all professionals here. We've are moving forward, and I think I wanted to understand why there was a need to remove Councilmember Simon from Stop Waste when there is no African American representation on the board, and that was just my concern. So Mayor Gonzalez, I just wanted to understand why he was not placed. I think there was, interest with regards to wanting to sit on these boards, and I wanted to understand what the process was and why Councilmember Simon was removed and replaced.
Are there any other questions or comments? Because it is my strong preference not to get into a discussion about the reasons why I made the decision not to appoint, because part of the whole point of courtesy is what you choose to share, when you share it, how you share it. And I'd rather not do that here today.
And that was not shared with Councilmember Simon. So
we have had, Councilmember Simon and I have been on multiple conversations. Councilmember Simon has been on multiple conversations with Councilmember Bowen. There are certain inaccuracies and things that have been said that I would prefer not to get into.
My hand is raised, Mayor, if I may respond.
So I will come to
concludes my
you.
comment.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go to Councilmember Bolt, and then I will come to you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Bolt.
Yes, thank you. I guess my first question would be, how many shuffles were there? I mean, besides Councilmember Blue leaving and me coming on, were there any other shuffles besides Vice Mayor Simon?
The short answer is yes. I don't have a count or a
No, that's
measure.
fine.
It's
I just
all
wanted to make sure it wasn't just one
multiple
for
people.
myself. Okay.
Yes.
I do agree with Vice Mayor Simon that having historical knowledge and being on a commission, what it does and how it allows us to grow in our role and be better and better represent the city. Not that Councilmember Bowen couldn't represent us in a good way, but I do believe people can grow and get better. And the fact that he was on track to be president of that, I think that speaks volumes to what he was doing there. So those are just my comments. And the one question was, if this isn't the only shuffle, that's something for me to think about.
Coming to you, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, kind of respond to that no shuffle. My understanding that this is the only shuffle unless it was mutually agreed, unless that person was okay with it being pulled from them. This is the only one I understand that was pulled from someone who was not reached out to or did not want to get off of that committee. So I would say this is an anomaly. And the second comment would be, no reason has been given to me why I've been pulled off. No reason from either the mayor or, Councilmember Bo and I had a good discussion today on this, and I still don't have any reason why I was pulled off. And that's why I say this feels like a continuation of the censorship if I'm not being given a reason.
Councilmember Bolt.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. My next question is, what is the procedure if we choose to vote this down? Then what happens? It just goes back to you and you reappoint, right? I mean, it would turn into a circle.
The appointments are I come with the list. I also have the prerogative to just pull this, and we don't have appointments. So ultimately, it's a ratification. The point, as I understand it, and the history that I've observed is the ratification is to assure that that someone that's not suitable, shall we say, has been appointed.
Okay. So it just goes back to you and
It comes back to me. The council does not have the right to appoint. Councilmember Aguilar.
I think to pull this would be a disservice to the community. I would like to move this item and bifurcate just the stop waste portion and have a separate discussion, if you may, and then we can have a separate discussion about this at another meeting. But in order for us to remain on our roles in our intergovernmental agencies or special districts, boards, that we move this item with the exception of stop waste.
So I will not bifurcate it. Councilmember Azevedo.
Well, I was going to second it. I would like to push a vote to see if we can get this passed, except for the stop waste, because you know what, I thought about it, and you know what, he's been on that committee. I've been on the committee, and it takes some years to learn the committee. So I believe him being on the committee, he's learning the committee. So I believe he should be able to stay on it, and you should have talked to him about it. I think that's kind of messed up, not, telling him the reason why.
Councilmember Villeros Walton.
Well, I'd also like to elevate that this would be the only position that Councilmember Bowen would be in a leadership position. So I'm actually not, would like to keep it as is. I would like to expand the knowledge of this board to the rest of the council. I think I do want to thank Vice Mayor Simon for his service. And yes, he serves on Oraloma, and that brings great wealth of experience. But he's also served on this board for several years now. And Councilmember Bowen, I think, is qualified and smart and is ready to take on representing San Leandro on this board. I appreciate your service, Vice Mayor, but I also would like to see some other voices on that board, and I would support Councilmember Bowen to as the city council, as representing the city on this board.
Okay, so I'm going to move the item and see if there is a second. I'm moving item
can I have
5D as in David.
May I have
For a
another
second.
here? Mayor, my hand is raised. May I make another comment?
No, you may not. I'm asking for whether there's a second. That's what's on the floor right now.
I'd second the motion.
I've got a motion and I've got a second. And I'm going to call the question. Let's vote.
Vice Mayor Simon, your vote?
No.
All votes are in. Motion passes. 4 yeses, 1 no, and 2 abstentions. Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Bolt, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Vice Mayor Simon, no. Councilmember Aguilar abstain. Councilmember Azevedo abstain. And Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes.
Okay, item 6 on our agenda are reports and comments from city manager and city attorney. City manager, coming to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members and community members. I'd like to announce that in December, the city launched the second iteration of the Small Business Security Assistance Program. Eligible businesses may apply for a comprehensive security assessment of their property up to 5,000 square feet and up to $5,000 in a grant for security improvements. The grant is designed to help eligible small businesses pay for security upgrades. The goal of the Security Assistant Program is to help the businesses with the greatest need where the assistance will have the biggest impact. Program guides and applications are due on or before January 31st and are available in English, Spanish, Chinese, and Vietnamese on the city website. Secondly, the library is starting the new year off with a host of special programs for the community. Just a reminder that all programming at the library is free of charge. In addition to the regular children's and teen programming, in January, the library will also host 6-part financial wellness series throughout January. You can attend one or all of the sessions. A family fun night with Professor Smart's science show on January 22nd. Family math party for grades K through 8 on January 25th. Meditation Mondays on the first Monday of every month. And lastly, Family Emergency Preparedness Workshop on January 28th. Thank you, Mayor. That concludes my announcement.
City attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure that the council was aware of a couple of changes under state law related to the gift limit. It used to be $590 starting January 1st of this year. It's now up to $630 of gifts from a single source. Still have to report $50 from a single source in a calendar year. You have to report that on your Form 700. So the gift limit now is up to $630 from a single source. The second in the change in law is that the Levine Act, if you received a political contribution within the last 12 months, starting from January 1st, it's $500. It used to be $250. But so moving forward, just keep in mind for recusal actions on political contributions after January 1st, it'll be up to now $500 from a single source until you would have to recuse yourself. We'll be having a training on a number of items, city manager, on next Monday. And so we'll have more room for questions to myself. I'll be providing the training.
Okay, so coming to, did you have a question, Councilmember Aguilar, on the reports?
Yes. So with regards to the, let's say a interested candidate or interested donor can donate $499 to a campaign, and we would not have to recuse ourselves.
That is correct. There are some exceptions, but that's essentially the law, is that up to $400, up to $500.
Councilmember Viveros Walton.
I came in, I would like to request a point of privilege. I came in the middle of public comment, and I just wanted to let the public know why I was late. And in the middle, I wasn't able to attend closed session. Am I allowed a point of privilege to just clarify?
Certainly.
Okay. I just wanted to let the public know I was unable to attend closed session. I was late to this meeting. I had a medical emergency in my family, and I was in the emergency room with caretaking of a family member. And I came as soon as I was able. And I just would like to apologize because it was really last minute, and I was unable to be part of very important discussions during closed session that I would have liked to be a part of. So I just wanted to just put it out why I was not in attendance of the closed session and why I was late to this meeting. Thank you very much.
At this point in time, we're going to move to item number 7, which is public comment on items that are not on our agenda today. So you have that opportunity to speak for 2 minutes on items that are not on our agenda. How many do you have in person, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, I have none in person, and I only have hands up online.
Okay, let's go online, please.
Jenny Madsen, you may unmute yourself.
So, my name is Jenny Madsen. It was my intention to make a land acknowledgement at a November council meeting, but I got a bad flu, so I'm doing it tonight. Wisdom sits in places. It is like water that never dries up. You need to drink water to stay alive. You also need to drink from places. You must remember everything about them. You must learn their names. You must remember what happened at them long ago. You must think about it and keep thinking about it. Then your mind will become smoother. Then you will see danger before it happens. You will walk a long way. You will be wise. 20 years ago, a book at the San Leandro Library reached out to me with those words of Apache wisdom, and they have stayed with me. And I've come to feel that it particularly applies to San Leandro. One of the first things I came to understand about San Leandro politics back then was that the city was run by folks on the east side. Then we passed an ordinance that made that council persons had to reside in the district they represented. Now, in order to make outside influence less of a factor in council elections, we may need to enhance that so people run only in their district and council persons are elected only by residents in their district. I am thinking about what that means for San Leandro as a whole, and I sure hope you are too. Thank you.
Thank you. Ariel Strauss, you may unmute yourself.
Happy New Year. My name is Ariel Strauss. I'm counsel for the appellant for full agenda item 8A. And I was looking forward to being there with you in person. And so I decided to take the opportunity to give a preview of the 2-minute version. The 80-foot macro tower proposed for 440 Peralta is on a parcel zoned for transit-oriented mixed-use infill development. And the 2 neighboring parcels zoned the same and now occupied by a tow yard and self-storage. These are prime opportunities for infill development close to BART and adjacent to Semper Verde Park. Under land use element and housing element of the general plan, the city's policies promote dense mixed-use infill here. However, AT&T's own projections show that large parts of the buildable airspace of both the neighboring parcels will be exposed to levels of radio frequency emissions that the FCC considers unsafe. The tower is right up against the line of my client's property, which can be built up to 65 feet tall with no setbacks. The use permit has a condition that cell tower will have to be adjusted if nearby multi-story buildings are constructed in the future. However, that does not prioritize dense mixed-use infill development in this transit corridor as anticipated by the general plan. In reality, AT&T will have invested considerable amounts of money building the tower, and a developer will have to negotiate its design with AT&T, and a lender will have to get comfortable with exactly which antennas are shut off or powered down. As former real estate counsel to lenders in hundreds of multifamily projects, this is a nightmare. Those bankers are risk averse. Insurers might not be comfortable either. It's injurious to the value of the neighboring parcels. And the cell towers not promote mixed-use development densely over the entire zone, it hinders it. Even if the desired mixed-use complexes are built, as they should, the two uses are incompatible. You just rendered half useless half or more of an 80-foot tower. It's still hulking there, blocking views from apartments or condos next door, but it can't provide any service. And so I do appreciate staff pulling this item to give it a closer look, and I look forward to working with them and seeing you all on January 22nd. And I hope that you will not approve this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Douglas Spalding, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Viveros Walton, I wish a speedy recovery to your family member. And of course, family comes before all else. That's understood. No apologies necessary, but I do appreciate your transparency. The reason I rose my hand to speak is that once again, we have an agenda that contains no item having anything to do with housing protections in our city. And this is while rents are going up, people are getting tossed out of their housing. We're in the winter, people are unhoused. And we as a city have a duty to do better by our neighbors, by our fellow residents. So I don't know, maybe it will come up in item 11. Somebody will think to try again to put it on the agenda. Had the emergency motion back in, I think that was December, succeeded, that would have been on the agenda for tonight. And I do believe it is an emergency. What I hadn't planned to speak about is the process that we all just witnessed for the appointment of council members. I understand that's your that is your duty, your responsibility, Mayor, by city charter, but I think maybe we should look at changing the city charter. I would prefer that it's a more collective process. I'm just appalled that, whatever did happen, it seems like it was inadequate. If there was discussion with Vice Mayor Simon, it sounds like that happened today, not in advance. You're not willing to tell us the reason for the substitution, except to say that you think it's inappropriate your serves. And I do believe we should develop leadership, and especially among women council members. But I think if there's a more collective process, there would be a way to figure it out other than, well, that's what I would like to do, so the other person gets aced out. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Bailey, you may unmute yourself.
Well, new year, new council. Welcome, Councilmember Bolt. Time for you all to roll up your sleeves and begin again to do the serious work of leading San Leandro. I look forward to seeing how you collaborate this year to meet the challenge. I feel hopeful about this year. I really do. I hope, first of all, that you'll respect and value the judgment of your professional staff who do the heavy lifting for all of us. I hope I'll see you treat each other with sincere respect and value the unique contribution each of you makes. Honestly, I would love to hear you say on the dais, "Thank you, council member, you make a good point." Or while addressing staff, Councilmember Y asked a good question. I'd like to follow it up with this one. Acknowledging each other's good ideas, including across perceived ideological lines, loses you nothing. I don't know what typically goes on in your closed-door meetings. I hope that this year you'll be honest, fair, and creative in your productive debates, especially as you address the budget. Lastly, I hope you won't campaign from the dais, that you won't see us residents as just votes and dollar signs. You've not been elected to serve special interests that you think you need to get elected the next time. We elected you for your judgment. And I very much hope that this year you'll feel the seriousness of that responsibility. It definitely won't always be comfortable. Thank you for listening to me this time. Thank you for your service to San Leandro. Now on to a productive 2025.
Thank you. San Leandro Chamber, you may unmute yourself.
Hello, everybody. This is Emily Grego, San Leandro Chamber of Commerce, President and CEO. I want to start by saying Happy New Year to everybody. We are looking at 2025. It's going to be a great year. And I want to say congratulations to our newly and re-elected city council members. We look forward to collaboration and respect amongst each other, and of course, in working with the business community and with our residents and just everybody as a whole. I think it's going to be a great year. So congratulations to you all. I also wanted to highlight this year's holiday season. It was a phenomenal, It's a Wonderful Night celebration in downtown San Leandro. I hope all of you were there, and if you weren't, just know that it was really fantastic. There was just a lot of community spirit, and I hope to continue that. The Chamber also did Light Up San Leandro, and we had some entries. We're going to continue that and see if we can get more spirit across San Leandro during the holiday season and invite more visitors to come and see us. We hope to see the trees downtown East 14th get lit up. They've been wrapped in years past, and we'd love to see that happen again. So whatever we can do to help with that, we'd love to do so. Also, just want to let everybody know that the Best of San Leandro Awards is happening on January 30th. Check your social media, check our website. You can vote for your favorite San Leandro business. And just remember that a thriving community is only as good as its thriving businesses. So looking forward to 2025, everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, there is no more public comment.
So thank you to all our public commenters. With that, we will go to the item 8 on our agenda for the benefit of Councilmember Vitas Walton was pulled, item 8A, and will be brought back at our next regularly scheduled meeting. We don't have presentations today for item 9, but we do have action items. So our first action item is a motion to designate the vice mayor to serve for a period of 1 year pursuant to City Charter, Section 310. Big picture, this should be relatively uneventful since we developed a process during this year whereby we just kind of rotate through based on some criteria. So I'll begin with Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. I would like to nominate Ryan Acevedo for vice mayor.
Okay. Do I have other nominations?
Yes, first I got a question. Are we rotating or are we just going to go up for votes and then whoever gets 4 votes? Is that how we're doing it?
So we had talked about in rules about this idea that Council Member Vice Mayor Simon wanted to put in place. Because he had wanted to make sure that everybody got their turn. And so what we did is we said that we would look for the most senior folks and make sure that everybody had gotten a chance. And in his case, he had been here, I think it was 3 years, and had not had a chance to be vice mayor. And so the system resulted in him being selected for vice mayor last year. At this point in time, we have other council members that have not been vice mayor yet. I think we have 3 on the council that have not been vice mayors at this time.
All right, well, I'd like to nominate Councilmember Aguilar.
Okay. Councilmember Vitas Walton.
Well, based on the process that we had established, I'd actually like to nominate the next person who has the longest serving, who has not had a chance to be vice mayor. That would be Councilmember Bowen.
Okay, so I've got 3 nominations currently. I've got Councilmember Aguilar being nominated. I've got Councilmember Acevedo being nominated, and I've got Councilmember Bowen.
Can I make a comment, Mayor?
There's no comment. I'm just taking nominations. So just give me a second. At this point in time, I'm going to go to, so no more questions, no more nominations. Okay, so do you have a nomination, Vice Mayor?
No, they're already.
Okay, that's fine. So at this point in time, I'm going to close the nomination process. So we have 3 folks nominated. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the public for public comment, and then I'll come back for a discussion in the room. So public comment next. Do we have any public comment on this item?
Mr. Mayor, we have no public comment on this item.
I will close public comment, and I'm going to come back to you, Vice Mayor.
Yes, a couple comments. The first question or comment is, I did bring up this item last year because I wanted to see rotation amongst folks, but I also wanted to see a sense of fairness. And I didn't want to see a bunch of bickering, and I wanted folks to get along and a fair process. However, I'm not seeing that tonight on council. I'm not seeing a fair process overall, referring back to the previous item I pulled. And should we have a new process for appointments of the committee members so they are fair? I don't understand why some items should be a fair process and some are not. So that is my comment. I'm very disappointed, just as a whole. Second is, my understanding the council handbook has no mention of this rotation process. Is that correct?
So I'm going to go to city attorney on what it is that the city council handbook currently says.
The city council handbook does have this process that was approved by the council after the rules committee. It says the vice mayor will be designated by seniority. Seniority is to be defined by dates sworn into office. If two council members have equal seniority, option to defer nomination. If more than one member remains, random name draw to establish seniority that year.
Is that available online, that council handbook?
It is.
Okay, because I looked at a version not long ago and that wasn't the version.
Does that close your question or comment?
Can you repeat it one more time, Rich? Because I don't have that version available.
Certainly. The vice mayor will be designated by seniority. Seniority is to be defined by date sworn into office. If two council members have equal seniority, option to defer nomination. If more than one member remains, random name draw to establish seniority that year.
So I hear the definition of seniority. Does it mention if you served before or not?
It does not.
Okay, so that is not the criteria that you served before or not. The criteria is seniority. And if that's the case, who's the most senior of those that have been nominated?
So that I'm going to go to city attorney on that.
Most senior of the council members who's been nominated as of the date. So if two council is to be defined by dates sworn into office. So I think that would be Councilmember Aguilar.
Okay, so we have to follow the protocol. That is who we would vote for, correct?
No, that is for us to decide. So now,
If we want to follow the protocol. Okay, if we want to follow the protocol, Councilman Aguilar is the one we would select, correct?
that is what we will decide as a council today.
Okay, if we want to follow the protocol. Thank you.
So I'm going to go to Councilmember Vedas Walton.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions. So in 2024, Vice Mayor Simon was Vice Mayor. 2023? Can we go through the, I want to go all the way back to 2020.
And by the way,
Maybe we can save that. I just want to make sure that we know who on the current council has served as Vice Mayor, because I really do want to see that as a rotating seat.
So I can just tell you by looking down council roll that two people present have served as vice mayor, Councilmember Aguilar and Councilmember Acevedo.
I know we can't ask. Right,
Oh, yeah,
last year,
yeah.
2024.
Currently, but yes.
I know I can't ask questions to my colleagues here, but can you yell out the year that they served as council members? Or Mayor, can you ask?
So my recollection, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Councilmember Aguilar, is that you were in 22, 21, 20, okay, and 2020. And then Councilmember Acevedo in 2023. Councilmember Simon in 2024.
So Simon in 2024, Azevedo in 23. Who served in 22?
Pete Ballou, I think. Yeah.
And 2021?
Does anybody remember? We can look
Cox.
it up. I'm sorry, Cox.
Member Cox. Well, being that everyone has already served as vice mayor, I don't see why the position can be rotated to the next senior person who hasn't served. I think it's an equitable thing to do. I think as the folks that have served as vice mayor would say, it's a position where we can learn some things, and I would like to request reconsideration of my colleagues to have a person who hasn't served yet in this position to serve in that role. Councilmember Bowen is
But do address the chair if you don't mind.
oh, I'm sorry.
Because, it's
I'll address the public.
The public, there you go.
Councilmember Bowen has served honorably through her time. She comes prepared to every meeting. I don't think I've seen her miss a meeting since I've been serving with her on the council. I think she'd be a great fit for vice mayor, being that she's the longest serving council member that has not yet served in this vice mayor role. Thank you.
Councilmember Azevedo.
Yeah, I had a question. Kind of the same as Vice Mayor Simon. So in the city handbook, it doesn't mention, it just mentions seniority. It doesn't mention who hasn't served as vice mayor. Basically.
Correct.
Okay.
Councilmember Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor. I distinctly remember having this conversation about the process last year because Vice Mayor Simon wanted to be vice mayor that year. And so we literally went through this process as the most senior person because this was the decision we made about how to appoint vice mayor. As part of the previous censure hearing we've talked about numerous times, I've heard other council members say that they felt like this was a continuation of it. And as a person that had voted for the censure and sitting here listening to the comments by my fellow colleagues about why I should not be on the only committee that I'm on and why I should not be vice mayor feels like a little bit like retaliation to me. And I would love to understand the process. And if people on the council need to look at the city charter, we have it printed out and available to everybody. And I would actually like it maybe if the city clerk could provide us a copy on hand. We can obviously look at it online, but that would be really helpful if we can please respect the city charter and please respect the process, because we are having a lot of conversations about things that feels incredibly unnecessary, especially to set the tone for what this council will be for the next year.
Okay, so I'm going to jump into this fray, and it's highly disappointing. I got to tell you, I am just disappointed. And I'll tell you why. Because last year, this entire discussion was brought to bear, and we specifically gave Councilmember Simon the opportunity to be vice mayor. And his argument was very simple. I am the most senior person who hasn't been vice mayor yet. It could have gone to Councilmember Bowen by a majority of votes. But out of respect for his wish, out of courtesy to him, we gave him that title. And yet, he comes back the next year and says, now I want to change the process. I want to change my argument. And I consider that fundamentally disrespectful to the people of San Leandro and to us as a council. Because we had an agreement on how we would work together. What makes it even worse for me is that in a time of trying to work together effectively and choosing not to call out the challenges that resulted in him not being appointed, instead, drama was created in these chambers. So a direct effort was made to try to respect him as an individual, and yet he is choosing to disrespect the person that he specifically told last year, thank you, you can be vice mayor next year. I find that patently offensive.
May I make a comment, Mayor?
At this point in time, I am going to call for a vote. And that vote is going to be for Councilmember Bowen to serve as vice mayor. It is my prerogative as mayor to pick the order of the voting, and that's the order that I'm going in.
May I ask a clarifying question?
You may not ask a question right now.
Even though it's not following.
You may
the
not
handbook?
ask a question. You are out of order. Please vote.
Councilmember Azevedo, your vote, please. Vice Mayor Simon, your vote.
No.
All votes are in. Motion passes. 4 yeses, 1 no, and 2 abstentions. Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Bolt, yes.
Please read the vote.
Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Bolt, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Vice Mayor Simon, no. Councilmember Aguilar, abstain. Councilmember Azevedo, abstain. Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes.
Okay, so the motion carries. Moving on to item 10B. So direct your question to me. What is the question? Would you like to revote, or would you like to make a comment for the record that you'd like a different vote recorded for you? What are you asking?
Yes, I'm just going to vote yes. Yeah, I wanted to vote yes. I thought about it and I was excited and then yes.
Okay, so now hold on a second. Okay, so I've got parliamentarian clarification. Do you have a motion? What is your motion? Okay, so do we,
Second.
So we've got a motion to revote and we've got a second. Anything else you'd like to clarify on this? Okay, let us vote again.
Vice Mayor Simon, your vote. Vice Mayor Simon, your vote, please.
No.
Okay, motion passes. 5-1-1. Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Bolt, yes. Councilmember Bowen, yes. Vice Mayor Simon, no. Councilmember Aguilar abstained. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. And Councilmember Veros Walton, yes.
So the pending questions in queue related to that item? Councilmember Aguilar, something on that item? Because I'm going to move on to 10B.
Oh, I just wanted to say, Mayor, we have to be sober here. I don't appreciate your candor and making references with regards to making allegations to Fred Simon on his vote. I am appalled and disgusted. I just would have just like to move forward with the vote without that comment. So that's my comment. Let's move on.
Okay, Councilmember Viveros Walton, did you have something on this?
I just wanted to congratulate our new vice mayor. Congratulations, Vice Mayor Bowen.
Okay, at this point in time, let's go to item 10B. So we've got the Parks and Landscape the adoption, the approval and implementation. The item is to adopt a resolution to approve and implement the tree master plan that has been developed. And we've got Parks and Landscape Manager Jennifer Aletta here to introduce the item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jennifer Aletta, and I'm the Parks and Landscape Manager for the Recreation and Parks Department. And I'm pleased to present to you the tree master plan for your consideration. The plan follows a 2-year planning, tree inventory, and public engagement process facilitated by our consultant, Planet Geo, and their partners, and initiated by the former sustainability manager, Dr. Hoi-Fei Mok. The product is a high-level plan that sets the vision and goals for how the city cares for the urban forest. The plan was presented to the Facilities and Transportation Committee on December 4th, and we endeavor to address the committee's questions and feedback in tonight's presentation. But before we get started, I wanted to address a few key concerns that were brought up during that meeting. First, regarding invasive eucalyptus trees. We acknowledge the challenges posed by certain tree species, including potential failure and fire risk. We regularly monitor the over 300 eucalyptus trees in city parks and at our golf course. And we will determine the removal and replacement needs of those trees on a case-by-case basis. Next, regarding concerns about the tree species list and selections for smaller planting strips, the city street tree list available for selection by residents is limited to 11 trees from the overall species list that you will find in the tree master plan, and 5 of the trees species on that list are suitable for planting strips of 30 inches. Any tree selected by a resident for a city street tree is subject to the approval by the city arborist based on relevant site conditions. There is also a question about what constitutes a city street tree, as certain properties have easements, 3-foot easements onto their property. We intend to address this confusion through public outreach efforts as part of the implementation of the plan. There are questions about whether the ordinance provides sufficient protection for city street trees. And again, as part of implementation, we intend to evaluate our current ordinance and make adjustments as needed for planting preservation and protection of trees. And lastly, concerns were raised regarding PG&E and their work to clear utility lines. I want to assure the council that we have an ongoing relationship with PG&E, and we collaborate with them to ensure that city street trees are protected to the maximum extent possible. And now I'd like to introduce Alex Hancock, the Director of Urban Forest Consulting Services for Planet Geo, who is attending virtually. She will provide a short presentation, and we will both be available afterwards to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Alex Hancock. I'm with Planet Geo. And with that, I will go ahead and share my screen so that I can present a slideshow to you. And I think I need permission to share. Okay, very good. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so we are excited to share with you some highlights from the tree master plan process that Jennifer just informed us about. First, I want to acknowledge the project team. There were a lot of people involved in this. On the consultant side, I am the Director of Urban Forestry Consulting Services. We also had our data collection and inventory team and our GIS team involved as well. And we also had 2 sub-consultants involved, the Urban Forest Innovations Group and Arboreal Consulting. And just an idea of what we're covering today, we're going to do just a quick project overview. We'll talk about the tree inventory that occurred in the first year, the urban heat analysis, some community input, recommendations, and next steps. So this quote emphasizes a key concept in urban forestry that is really important to emphasize. Trees don't grow overnight. You have to plan accordingly for trees, and it is a joint effort between both the city municipality, but also the community. A successful urban forest that is both sustainable and resilient must have community support and stewardship. And so a goal of the tree master plan was to illustrate the benefits of trees in an urban environment. So many of us know what these benefits are. They clean the air, they sequester carbon, they provide habitat. But it's important that as we assess the urban forest for San Leandro, we bring it all together and not only talk about the benefits, but we also talk about the risks facing the trees, because when we have certain risks that could potentially wipe out trees, then we are putting those ecosystem benefits at risk. So when we see threats of certain pests or disease coming into the city, or impacts of climate change such as sea level rise or wildfires, these types of issues are exacerbated by the impacts of climate change. And we see that if a program does not have adequate staffing, resources, then it is much more of a challenge to deal with these risks as they arise. So the purpose of this tree master plan, I think just to zoom out and give you an idea, a tree master plan really is broad scale. It integrates with other city plans so that goals, strategies are aligned, so that city operations are addressed across many departments. And so it is really, this document is a guide. It is something that will inform future planning processes. So it doesn't get into all of the nitty-gritty details of how you might do specific planting projects. This is really about the larger scale here. Some of the key purposes and objectives were to integrate with other city plans, such as the general plan and the climate action plan, to redress inequities with both the services and the tree canopy benefits, and to encourage climate resiliency through growth of the tree canopy and preservation of existing trees and using sustainable practices. And of course, we always want to use the most current and best science and industry standards to make sure that the city is using the best practices available. So to give you an idea of the tree master plan process, it did start in June of 2022. That's when we kicked off the project. We started with research and analysis, where we worked with the city to organize different internal interviews with different departments, understanding program operations, and we did data collection of tree inventory data, as well as the urban heat analysis during that time. Then we moved into community engagement, where we shared that information with different focus groups and the community. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those findings, where all of the input that we gathered during community engagement led to the development of the goals, strategies, and targets that we included as the implementation section of the plan. And then we worked on plan development and really fine-tuned some of the implementation. So going back to the tree inventory, a tree inventory is counting your trees and understanding what trees you have in the city. How can you manage your urban forest if you don't know what you have? So this is, there was a collection of over 22,000 points throughout San Leandro. These data points were collected by arborists that are certified by the International Society of Arboriculture. These nearly 18,000 of those points are trees, and then over 4,000 of those points are planting sites that are identified as being capable of having a tree planted, and something that would be the appropriate place for a tree. And those are within public rights of way and parks. So of those nearly 18,000 trees, over 16,000 of those were street and right-of-way trees. And over 1,700 of those trees were located in parks. And it is important to note here that trees in natural areas along San Leandro Creek were not included in the inventory. It's partially due to different ownership along the creek. It's also partially because of the different management needs that are required for those areas. It's different than when you manage a street tree. Managing a natural area takes a more ecological approach, which really relies on the professional knowledge of city staff to handle those assessments on more of a case-by-case basis rather than a more standardized approach. And one key measure of urban forest resilience is species diversity. And when we think about species diversity, it's hard to grasp what would be an impressive amount of a variety of different trees in a city. Well, there is a standard, and it's called 10-20-30. And it basically says that no one species should make up more than 10% of the total overall population of the trees, and then 20 of the genera, and then 30 of the family. So you should be proud to know that in San Leandro, you do meet that standard. So the two most common species, though, are crepe myrtle and London plane tree, and those are each at 10% of the total population. And so those are trees that you really, they're very common. They do provide ecological benefits, but it is good to have more diversification, and it's a good opportunity to look for other trees that would be comparable, but are native, or just a different flowering tree or a different shade tree. One of the great benefits of a tree inventory is that you get valuable insight about tree health and the condition of your trees. So specific observations were gathered about the trees in San Leandro and what maintenance is needed to mitigate issues and even resolve apparent issues. And over here on the right, you can see that over 50% of the trees were rated as having a condition of good, very good, or excellent. So it is a very good sign that over half of your trees are in good condition. With this information, we then shaped a 5-year tree management program. And we worked with city staff to look at all of the data that was collected during the inventory and shift from the program of being reactive to requests or issues that come up to a proactive program. So with knowing all of the condition of your trees, you can actually be proactive and get ahead of issues before they turn into risks. So when in this program, in the first 2 years, it is a major goal to address a backlog of community requests that did result from a reduction of staff. And so to be able to catch up on the backlog is a key piece of this because obviously new requests come in all of the time. And then as we look through from top to bottom here, we get to a proactive program where you're addressing those issues ahead of time. You can get to a more cyclical approach of how you're managing your urban forest. And of course, then we also plan for planting. And as the city removes dead, dying, and unhealthy trees, you want to replace those and replenish your canopy. There were over 4,000 planting sites identified during the tree inventory, and those were primarily in the streets and rights of way. But a master list of recommended species was compiled based on not only the data about the trees in San Leandro, but also input from the community, our stakeholder focus groups, comparisons with other surrounding cities' recommended lists, and research throughout the industry. So while this is a master list, there are focus lists within it that are appropriate for different site sizes. They identify, within this list, it identifies the different height and spread categories so that you can understand how large these trees will be, what types of litter they have, and other characteristics about the tree. So this list is a guide, and it is something for city staff to use their professional opinion in helping to make recommendations for not only street trees, but park trees, median trees, and private property trees, parking lot trees. So a lot of this does come down to site assessment. And as we look at where, when we're going back to look at the climate resiliency objective of the plan, we wanted to do a heat assessment. So we looked at, these are 3 maps here. On the left, it's showing heat severity. So the darkest areas are showing the greatest heat severity, and then the light pink or no pink is showing the least heat severity. The middle map helps us to see where the city has the most canopy and the least canopy. So you can see that the area that is the lightest has 0 to 5% canopy coverage. And that is when canopy coverage is when we're looking down at the tree from a satellite imagery view, how much of the tree is covering land area. So the lightest areas are showing us 0 to 5% canopy coverage. And then the darkest areas are showing 15 to 20% canopy coverage. The map on the right here is showing impervious surfaces. And so you can see that the areas with the most abundant impervious surfaces are the areas that are in the darkest gray. And so the series of maps here shows a correlation between the idea that a lack of vegetation and tree canopy is correlated with higher temperatures. And, this may be obvious to many people, but it is something that is illustrated in these maps here. And on this slide, we show 2 maps that incorporate not only the factors we saw on the last slide, but also socioeconomic factors, such as disadvantaged communities, low-income communities, and communities at risk of displacement. So both of the maps here show the highest priority areas as being in the warmest tones. So on the left, you see those indicated in red, and then orange, yellow, green, and then blue. And then on the right, you see the highest priority area being orange, and then the yellow, green, and then on to the darkest green. So these maps are showing where tree planting would have the greatest impact. Of course, there are factors such as zoning and land use that will influence when and where trees can be planted. But when the conditions are right, the trees that would be planted in these high priority areas would greatly help to improve the environment. These maps aren't showing the only places where tree plantings will be, where they will happen. It's just that these areas would have the greatest impact if they do receive tree planting. Obviously, there are 4,000 sites identified throughout the city for tree planting. So tree planting will be happening citywide. So throughout the course of the 2-year project of the Tree Master Plan, we had outreach via the web and social media, 2 community surveys. We had a variety of public meetings and events, tree planting events that helped to serve as public education, and then also focus groups and workshops that involved both stakeholders throughout the community and also city staff. And, these 2 community surveys, we got great response. So it was 368 responses in 3 languages. And so we used these responses to help us shape and inform the goals and strategies that we have in our implementation section. These results revealed both strengths and opportunities for growth. And so I wanted to share 2 of the opportunities for growth here. The first one being that 40% of the respondents felt that quality of the public trees has declined over the past 10 years. So this shows that more proactive maintenance, just more often maintenance would probably help a lot to help the condition and the perception of urban forestry and the care for the trees in the community. And also community outreach and education efforts. And also then the second question here showing the areas or the reasons why people might not want a tree. These are the scale of 1 to 5, 5 being very concerned. The highest concern here is water consumption, especially during drought. And so we could go into a lot more detail on that if you have more questions. I'm gonna speed on through some of this so that we can get to some questions if we have any. So as we said, there were tree planting events that were coinciding with the CAL FIRE grant, and the city is going to continue having tree planting events in different capacities with different grant funding and community groups over the years. These are some of the focus groups that we had, and we got some amazing results and great advice and information. And all of the recommendations are separated into 3 goal themes for planning, performance, and people. So we wanted to focus not only on the natural environment, but focusing on the people of who is caring for the trees, which community members will help to build the type of urban forest resilience that we're looking for. And then also the performance of the trees and good planning and community priorities. And so then we have all of the goals have actions associated with them with targets. So the plan has a lot of detail provided and many benchmarks along the way so that it doesn't happen all at once. It's over the course of 20 years for some of these goals, others 10 years, others just 1 year. So that is a summary of our plan, and I would hand it back to Jennifer if she wanted to wrap up with any next steps.
I'd just like to mention that we will be entering, once the plan is adopted, we will be entering the implementation phase, which is going to include public education, robust public education this year, ordinance review, and really honing in on our implementation plan for maintaining our city street trees, hopefully on a proactive basis, moving away from reactive tree planting.
So thank you for the presentation. At this point in time, we're going to take council member questions. We'll then go to public comment and then wrap up with a discussion. I'm sorry, we do have a comment from the clerk.
Mr. Mayor, I just would like to note that when we have a council member who is attending online and we have a presentation and a consultant on Zoom, I cannot take comments from Vice Mayor Simon and have the presentation up simultaneously because it uses the same system. So I just want to let everybody know, and especially Vice Mayor Simon, that if and when you want to speak, I will not be able to have the presentation up on the screen for you.
Thank you for that reminder. I know we've encountered that in the past, but thank you for the reminder.
Thank you.
Beginning with Councilmember Vivetus Walton, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation, both remotely and here, and for your work, both Public Works and Parks. Just a question in terms of old growth trees, and I was looking through it again, and I know that that's been a concern of community members of maintaining, safeguarding, protecting some of the old growth trees that are both in public, city-owned property, but also some private property. Is there, and I was looking for it and I couldn't find it, is there some sort of like number of old growth trees?
We don't have a specific number of old growth trees within our inventory. Our inventory is specific to city street trees. And we can only assess the size of the tree. We can't assess the age of the tree. You have to do additional I mean, you can make a relative assumption about the tree based on the tree species, but you would have to do additional testing to actually know what the age of the tree is. We do have an ordinance for protecting all city street trees. We do not have a city ordinance for protecting private trees.
Yeah, I think especially like Manor Park has seen some during times of wind and storm, there's been some old, to me, what looks like old growth trees that have fallen in Manor Park. I go there all the time with my family, and it kind of hurts my soul to see those beautiful old trees, especially the one that is a great climbing tree over the path. I think folks know which one I'm talking about. It's a great climbing tree. My other question is regarding budget. I think I keep bringing this on. I keep bringing back on a variety of, not just on this, but and I know that on page 21, there is on 2030, there is an action item for a budget to be prepared and approved, but I don't see any, and maybe this is coming, but I would like to ask around how much does it cost? How much are we projected to invest to be able to plant new trees in some of the sites that are prioritized or that have been proposed to be prioritized? How much does it cost to maintain the current trees that we have? I think it's a practice that I'd like to ensure that we continue to build into, and ensure that when we talk about, I consider trees as part of our city infrastructure, and as such, we must plan to maintain and keep them and replace. Is there any idea of the budgetary costs attached to this? And
We were pretty challenged with presenting a clear and concise document that provided budgetary needs, in part because there's a stark difference between what it costs for city staff to maintain trees and what it costs consultant or contractors to maintain trees. When we go out to bid or to RFP for a contractor, a per tree cost could vary between $150 a tree, $350 a tree. And so if you're talking about 1,000 trees, that's a huge price difference. And so, you know, we can only do what we can do with the funding that we have. And that's not just true for urban forestry, that's true for everybody, every single department in the city. We do what we can do with what we have. What we would like, at least for the first 2 years, is additional funding to clear up that backlog, because we have a significant backlog for a variety of different reasons. And to move away from this reactive, the people constantly contacting us saying we want our tree trimmed, we want our tree trimmed. It's just extending the amount of time it takes for us to get to those trees. So moving to a proactive approach, if we get additional funding for 2 years for contract services, and then having a proactive approach. Conversations about whether or not we should have more city staff, you know, those are difficult conversations to have, especially in a tight budget environment, and we're well aware of that. But we can piece together a really good program with city staff, with contract services, and with community participation. And I'm fairly confident that we can have a really good tree program if we're budgeted in those 3 areas well.
thank you. I do have one more question. Old growth trees, maintenance. The other one is just a quick feedback on page, and I guess my question were on the slide 15, slides 14 and 15, just a recommendation for the future, just to include some major thoroughfares so that we're able to make meaning of the map in terms of the prioritization. Like, I kind of know where like Davis Street is and Williams, but like, if we're talking about prioritizing city funds, especially in the areas of where we see red, where we see there's a high prioritization on page 15, versus the tree equity scores, it's hard for me to like, is that San Leandro Boulevard? Is that, I'm just if we can in the future add some place finding so that we can figure out where we are to ensure that when we talk about prioritization, we're able to really have a scalpel approach and not just like a overall approach. Those are all my questions, and I have more comments, but I'll save that for later. Thank you.
Councilmember Regular, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jennifer and Alex, for this presentation. Jennifer, can you tell me the CAL FIRE grant that we received, $1 million, we've already went through that.
Yes, that grant has exhausted.
Okay. And are there any other grants that we are looking at or have heard of to help provide funding?
Yes, this is slightly premature, but we've been given preliminary notice of award of a grant of $224,000. It's an extreme heat grant. That was another step that Dr. Mock took before they left to apply for that grant. We are receiving it. It's a planning grant, and it's basically to plan a Western County network with Alameda County and HARD in order to identify partners within the community that can assist us with tree planting and early tree care. So that is coming on the horizon, and we will be getting that work within the grant timeline this year.
Wonderful, thank you. And looking at the heat map with regards to urban heat assessment, I noticed that my district, in District 3, the industrial district, which is also like a concrete jungle, is that something that we will focus on to help not only identify but implement trees in that location to help with tree canopy?
So there is a challenge with planting trees in industrial areas. Normally that occurs during the city's planning process. When new developments come online, there's requirements for vegetation. And so we will be eyeing those plantings in those areas with that in mind. It's going to be more of a policy planting arm that we're going to do. The proposed city street tree planting is going to follow the proposed street tree list, which is in the it's in our map in our inventory, and that's throughout the city of San Leandro. So it's not just in that priority area. Additional tree plantings, whether it's parks, medians, and other landscaped areas, we would want to prioritize in areas where there's less canopy. Yes.
So like a main artery, which is almost desolate, like Washington artery leading into downtown San Leandro. Very, very few trees, and walking in that area during the summertime, it's extremely hot because of the asphalt. Is that something that would be identified and listed to help during planning to implement a canopy along those, an artery as such?
Washington is a challenge because it doesn't already have in all areas defined planting strips. In the core downtown area it does, and those are very small. Those are 30-inch planting strips. Also by some of the shopping centers, 30-inch planting strips. So it is somewhat of a challenge, but it certainly can be an area of focus for us as we implement the plan.
We love a good challenge.
That's a good one.
Yes, it's a great challenge, and I'd love to help any way possible to help mitigate that, so that we can see trees all over town, especially in that main artery. For the most part, great job on consolidating this 95-page plan into this presentation. I don't have any other questions, but thank you.
Councilmember Azevedo, please.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a couple questions. On slide 9, it has 17,859 trees. Are those the total trees in the city, or? And then it has like 16,140 street trees and 1,719 park trees. Is that just city trees we're talking about? Okay.
Yes.
And so the community knows what's considered a city tree. If it's on the strip in front of their house, so if it's not on their property, or because I know some are city trees that are on people's lawns. So how does that work? How do they know if it's a city tree or not?
So this was a question that came up in the Facilities and Transportation Committee meeting, and it is a point of clarification that we will need to do more public outreach with the community. In most cases, a city street tree is in the planting strip between the sidewalk and the street. In certain areas of town, there is no planting strip. There's sidewalk, rolled curb, and then the street. In those areas, there's a 3-foot easement onto the homeowner's property. And if a tree is located within that 3 feet from the sidewalk, it is considered a city street tree.
Okay, so these are total trees, but these trees aren't counting on people's private properties. Do we know how many
No.
trees we have total in the city? Or we haven't?
We do not. We just have our canopy maps that we use.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Bowen, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jennifer, for the presentation. I was counting up for the percentages of trees that are good to excellent. I think it's at like 54%. And I know that there's a range, right, from above 50% up to 80%. Do we have a further breakdown of exactly where they are on that range?
Those are the ratings for the tree species. Within our tree inventory, each individual tree has its own rating. So we don't have a further defined rating list than that.
Okay, I was just thinking about how I really appreciate that we're trying to be more proactive and less reactive and thinking through these trees that seem like they're fine now, but may really just be at like 51% and like one little thing can happen. So that's an interesting thing to think about. I was also wondering if when we think about priority areas and where to plant trees, do we consider what is located in front of the tree or where the tree could be? For example, there is a big push right now to green schools and childcare centers because we know that there are huge like health disparities and children can learn better if they're in cooler spaces or can play on playground equipment because it's not completely hot. Is that part of the calculation of where trees need to be planted?
Well, those would be considered private property, the way we've designated it. So we did not count trees on school district property, and we did not count trees on private property. So, but that doesn't mean that we can't partner with organizations or with the school districts to have tree planting events on their property if that's something that the school district is interested in partnering. Partnerships is a big part of implementing this plan.
I was just looking at the CAL FIRE grant actually for the program is called Green Schoolyards. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but they specifically fund in significant amounts of money actually for schools, so that with cities and school districts, and also nonprofits. And I think there's a bunch of cities in the Bay Area that have received them. But thinking through Councilmember Rivera's questions earlier, which were fantastic, if we don't have a lot of funding for it, it might be useful for us as a city to connect these organizations, the nonprofits and the schools, with the funding, so that they're also greening our city then. And I'm like happy to share more of that with you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I've got Councilmember Simon to see it.
Yes, thank you. My question has to do with the requirement for trees, requirement to have trees. I just wondered if you could kind of clarify or answer, what are the requirements to have trees in our city?
And there are no requirements to have trees in the city. When a tree is removed, the goal is to replace the tree. So no net loss in trees. But there are no specific ordinances or rules requiring properties to have trees. With new developments that go through on commercial properties that go through the planning department, there are requirements for a certain amount of landscaping. But that would be the limitation.
Okay, because Councilmember Aguilar mentioned his area seems to be a desert, missing trees. The manor is similar. Very, very few trees. And so if anyone, the neighborhood wanted to cut down all their trees, it is what it is. There's nothing we can do about it.
There are fines in the city's current ordinance about removing trees. And so it becomes a public education and potentially an enforcement issue when it comes to cutting out trees, cutting down city street trees without consent. There are no limitations to cutting down private trees in the city of San Leandro at this time.
Okay, but to clarify, so city trees that are in the median in front of their houses or in their lawns, it is against an ordinance to remove those trees?
Without consent from the city, yes.
Okay, and if they do that, what are the repercussions?
The ordinance includes a fine of, I believe, up to $1,000 for removing a tree without consent.
Has the city ever issued a fine for removal of a tree?
We have not. It can be a challenge to identify when these trees are removed. And I think that's where we're struggling. We find out that we find out after the fact that the tree's gone. So that's, in terms of implementation, that's something that we need to work on. How we're gonna manage when people remove trees without our approval. And that involves a review of our current ordinance and how we're gonna enforce it. So that is part of our implementation, is to review that ordinance and see what the most productive way of enforcing those standards is.
Okay, but it sounds like we may not have known they were cutting the tree down, but we do know they cut the tree down after it was done. My question is, why are we not fining them if we know that they have done something that is against our rules?
It's a timing issue, and it can just be a challenge to go back to the homeowner, to know what that process is, to implement that process correctly. People, and if there is a process for disputing the fine, those sorts of things can be impediments to issuing fines.
Okay, and my next question has to do with funding. And a public commenter during the facilities meeting made a comment about San Francisco and how they have a funding mechanism to pay for O&M of their trees there. Have we researched that or looked into that? Their funding measure, their parcel tax for O&M based on lineal footage of street coverage to help us in San Leandro to get more funding?
We have not explored that, but that is something that we certainly can do as part of the implementation of the plan.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify, because I think there was a little bit of discussion about private property and public property, and I just want to make sure that we've got kind of the answers really clear in our record. So I think I heard you say that to cut down a city tree requires a permit.
Yes.
To cut down a private tree, does that require a permit?
No, it does not.
Okay. And I think confirming what Councilmember Simon was exploring was that if people cut down private trees, they can do that currently with impunity. There's no consequences to cutting down private property trees.
That's correct.
Okay. And then as far as fining people, what I think I heard you say is that it may be difficult to know who actually cut down the tree. We know that a tree got cut down, but who actually cut it down, who's responsible, might be a little bit more difficult to ascertain with certainty so that we can issue a fine.
Yes, I think that could be brought up as a reason for why a fine is disputed.
Okay. And then when PG&E or other utilities cut down trees, do they require a permit from the city?
Yes, they have a permitting process through the Public Works Department, and we are involved in Parks and Rec. We are involved in that process. So we receive the notices of where they want to remove trees. Typically, they apply for permits for tree trimming for clearing utilities, but there are certain occasions where a tree needs to be removed for a variety of reasons. And we do evaluate those requests as they come in.
Okay. Because I think that's one of the biggest complaints that I receive is that, hey, they cut this tree down and did we really know they were going to cut it down and all that kind of stuff? Yeah. One other comment that has come to me from the public around how we maintain trees is, and this is really just for the benefit of the public, there are times that we see trees that are cut down for maybe like to a height of about 3 feet. They're not removed. And I think we have city code or ordinance. We have something that says, trees should be cut flush. Are you familiar with situations where trees are not cut all the way to the ground, but remain at 3 feet, shall we say?
So we have a process operationally where if a tree is going to be removed, we leave it to at least 3 feet, 5 feet height, so that people don't trip over the stump. Because it can be very difficult to cut it perfectly flush. And so stumps are left at that height until we can go back and do stumps all at once. We take our machine out, we have a list, we go and do the list. The goal really is to stump and then replant as soon as possible. And so we try to operationally organize that. And so that's why you're seeing these stumps around town, and we have a backlog of work right now, so they can be there for a long time. They could be there for 6 months or whatever. But we are trying to clear that backlog and not have those stumps sitting there for extended periods.
Okay, thank you. Two more questions. If I am thinking about the trees at my home and I think, well, let me go to the tree inventory because I want to know if that's a city tree or that's my tree. Can I as a resident use that as an authoritative guide?
I would say mostly yes. There are some inaccuracies in the inventory. When we find them, we correct them. But on balance, if you have a city street tree and a planting strip, it's likely a city street tree, and you can find it on our city's inventory on our website.
Okay. So that's also a very common question. Is that tree or my tree or their tree or whose tree is that? And who's going to take care of that tree? My last question, I noticed that our heat maps talked about severe, moderately severe, not so severe, whatever the terminology was exactly. But it didn't really talk about actual temperatures. As part of our effort, do we have some temperature reduction goals? Or are we not that precise?
Not within our tree master plan. There may be goals of that nature in the climate action plan, but I'm not 100% sure about that.
Okay, let's go to public comment on this item. Do we have public comment?
We do, Mr. Mayor. We have 2 in person and 1 online.
Hey, please proceed in person.
Darlene Evans.
Without my time, I need a clarification on the blue and yellow page that was presented because I couldn't see what that was. It's near the end of the pages that were presented. It had a red, a blue, and a yellow chart. And I didn't see what the blue and the yellow represented.
Would you like someone to put it up? Do we have the presentation handy?
Yes.
Yes, I'd be happy to put that up now. Okay. And so can you see this?
I can see it, but I can't see any of the words of the title in the
Okay.
blue and the yellow. The red is
This
people.
says people, and then blue is performance. And so that's the performance of the trees themselves. And then planning. So that's the
Okay,
planning.
got it.
Yep.
No, I'm thinking. Oh, thinking. I did a video course. I did landscape courses up at Mayor College, and their college is being revamped 5 times bigger than it was before. I have done redwood trees. I have done city trees. I've done my trees. I've done private trees. A man in a truck the other day came, and he said he was from PG&E. Cut down the tree entirely. It is a city tree. And I was so glad because it took me 4 hours to sweep the sawdust. And he was PG&E. And he agreed with me before he brought out his equipment. He was there, I thought, to eat the tamales at the place that's condemned. And there were leaves so much at one time, it looked like a little fort for kids. And the homeless came underneath the canopy and such like that. On San Leandro Boulevard, he planted new trees there. I pruned them because they were so dry, because I know something that's smaller will get bigger and it will be wiser and it will be thicker. What the PG&I agreed on, and
Thank you. Your
oh
time is up.
gosh.
Mike Katzlakabe.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Mike Katzlakabe. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation and for having a tree master plan. As someone who spends a fair amount of time of walking through the city, I know from firsthand experience the amazing difference that walking with trees makes compared to walking without trees. One of the things that stood out to me on the urban heat assessment slide is noticing where the urban tree canopy was densest and where the urban heat severity was maximal. And I think I could broadly say it correlates to the wealthier areas of town, north and east, having greater trees. And since those are largely city trees, I think that speaks to some of the past, the unpleasant past of this city. And it's not just this city that experiences this thing, but it's one of the things that's well known that in lower income areas, there tends to be less tree canopy and less attention by governments basically to those areas. So I would certainly encourage that. And I'm trying to do my part. I have trees on my property as well. Not because of my responsibility, but because fortunately the person who lived there before had the good foresight to put those in. And let me tell you what an amazing difference it is to sit under one of those trees on a very hot day when it's actually too hot to be inside the house and too hot to be anywhere else. But under that tree and in the shade and the cool, respiration that it provides, it is absolutely amazing. So whatever we can do, I did organize my neighbors and we have asked for trees on our street. And I certainly hope we can proceed with that. I'd love to see that throughout the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, there's no more comment in person, so we will go online.
Please proceed.
Lawrence Abbott, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody that was involved with this project. I know it's been a long time and a lot of work, and the presentation was wonderful also. Very, very excited about the possibility of reversing the trend of tree loss and start restoring our urban forest. The only comment that I had was, I think I heard just a little bit of a mistake. I may have heard it wrong. I think there was a slide that was talking about ecological diversity of the urban forest. So, there is a tree diversity that you want to have. And I think you mentioned the 10-20-30 ratio. But ecological diversity is biodiversity or ecological diversity. It's the diversity of all the native trees, if you're talking about trees, or trees and plants, and the other plants if you're just talking about the ecosystem in general. And but in an urban forest, you typically don't have just native trees. The city of Oakland was named after the oak trees that lived in Oakland. And virtually the entire flatland of Oakland, and still some of the parks that have the original trees that were there from before there was any development, they were all one species. It was all the coast live oak. And so that, took up a large percentage of Oakland, probably 90%. And so that would be the native ecological diversity or biodiversity. So it's not really ecological diversity when you're planting trees that come from all over the world. You're replacing trees, the native trees that would have been here, with trees from Africa and China and just all over the world. And you're actually destroying ecological diversity or biodiversity, which isn't necessarily a bad thing in a city, because people like to
Your
buy
time is up.
plants. But that's all.
Douglas Spalding, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. I'm going to follow in those footsteps. First, I do want to take my hat off once more and recognize Dr. Mock for her excellent work in getting this whole process started and getting us that CAL FIRE grant and organizing all the tree plantings. And thank you very much for the presentation and work you've done since. We're all about the abiotic benefits of planting and maintaining trees, whether it's more oxygen, taking CO2 out of the air, reducing the temperature, increasing the shade, increasing everybody's mental health. That's all good. I do think we need a tree ordinance that does address private trees, and that should be within the scope of the city tree master plan. And that ordinance should protect existing native trees. That ordinance should require a permit to remove private trees. And that ordinance should require planting replacement trees when trees are removed. Just as we have trained a whole new generation of planters, thank you, Lawrence Abbott, for doing your arborist best. I think we could also train some pruners. I'm hearing you say that's a kind of big work burden. And maybe if the city had a tool library with loppers and stuff like that, I don't think we want people going up on ladders, but we could do a lot of low level pruning. My final comments have to do with the tree list, and I agree with Lawrence's comments about the importance of planting. To me, that is the foremost criteria. I don't know why the Bangalore palm, what you have listed as a king palm, is on your list, since it does have a reputation as being invasive. I love all the ceanothus and manzanita. I don't understand why Western redbud does not make the list, a native species. And for larger spaces, coast live oak should be there. Coast live oak supports 270 diverse species of insects.
Thank you. Your time is up.
On the list.
Mr. Mayor, there is no more public comment.
Okay, so we'll come back to council members for discussion. Councilmember Viveros Walton, please.
I'm not sure who this question would go to, but I'm really interested in kind of connecting the comment from Jennifer and superimposing that with the budget process. Is any budget asked from this particular ordinance, will that come through like the departments asking for funds to expand the planting, or what would be the process so that I really want to prioritize the areas that don't have a lot of, that have been shown with the data that have high heat index, don't have a lot of trees, and would like to prioritize any additional funds for those funds to go to places where we need more trees. So I'm just wondering, like, what would be the process to allocate or find out what the need is, or I'm just trying to figure out what to actually move it to reality and fund allocation.
We'll start with city manager and we'll kind of see how that proceeds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to defer back to Parks Manager Jennifer Oletta to discuss the implementation phase.
As part of the current budget process, we did not include additional funding per the plan because the plan was not yet adopted. Going forward, I think the approach needs to be a little bit more creative about where the funding comes from and how we manage that funding. We do intend to go out to RFP for tree contract services. That would be an opportunity to identify what the funding needs are for the 5-year planting schedule and then bring that to council for approval if that doesn't fit within the existing budget that we have. But we haven't asked for additional funding yet.
Thank you. I also wanted to highlight the San Leandro 2050 group, who has been doing extensive work on urban greening. They held the Urban Greening Summit. They were a big part of providing feedback, a part of your community input, and just wanted to highlight their key themes and ideas for action. And I see them working really closely with our work. So I just wanted to elevate that as Councilmember Bowen mentioned, and some of my other colleagues about partnering with organizations. And you also mentioned the necessity to partner with organizations to be able to kind of green our city. So just wanted to highlight San Leandro 2050. And then those are all my comments because we're running a little late.
Councilmember Azevedo, please.
Yes. I just wanted to make a comment about AI. I've been fascinated with AI lately. I went to a conference and learned about it, and my oldest son works on robots in South Carolina, and he's been telling me about encryption and all this. But I think that we can use AI in some of these, like for the removal of trees. We could scan the whole city. I know there's programs where we could scan the whole city, see where all the trees are, and see if they're removed. I mean, it's the same with garbage. They have in some cities set up where they know where garbage is piling up, and it automatically calls Public Works. It's still in progress, but it automatically does it. So I think that we can look into AI in different departments, and this is one of them. We can look into the removal of trees. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Coming back to Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Alex. I know a lot of hard work and effort has been put into this tree master plan and working with the community and the various organizations, in particular with our native tribes here in San Leandro. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution to approve and implement the tree master plan.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Aguilar and then Councilmember Votis Walton, coming back to you.
Yeah, I'd like to second that motion.
I've got a motion by Aguilar. I've got a second by Azevedo. I'm still going to continue with commentary, beginning with Councilmember Simon.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you, Dr. Mock. When you were here, you did an awesome job. Appreciate you so much. Staff and our city manager for the tree master plan. It is so important. I am concerned about the lack of funding in our city to maintain our trees and get all of this done. And I believe that is the reality. Is we want a lot of good things, and a lot of good things in this plan, but we just don't have the money for it. So I'm very interested in the city, our staff, following up on what San Francisco did to get the money to actually fund what they tried to do. So I wanted to know if any feedback could be given now on, can that be done as part of this process? And how would that change how you come back to council?
I'm going to start with city manager on this question, on the following up with San Francisco on funding sources and how to think about funding in the future. And you can pass that along if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So thank you, Councilmember Simon. We have that note from your comment earlier, and staff will follow up with San Francisco.
That's great. Thank you. And the other comment would be just requiring trees on every home, or even in the Washington corridor, as Councilmember Aguilar brought up. It sounds difficult to do, but I think we could put our heads together and come up with a way, even if that means modifying the street configuration, something to get some trees in there. So I'm very looking forward to that. And tonight on item 11, I'm going to be moving an item to be discussed during our priority session to require trees in every home, every parcel. So I'm looking forward to us as a city getting more trees. And unless we require them, I don't think it's going to happen. So thank you for the presentation, but I really want us to require trees in our homes. Thank you. And businesses.
Okay, at this point in time, seeing no other comments, I'll make a few quick comments. I think we've talked a lot over the last couple of years about the total cost of running a city. So I think the budget piece is really important. When we talk about planting trees, understanding the maintenance cost associated with those trees. You described the 5 species that might do better in the 30-inch planting strip, really laying out that very explicitly. Like if we know that trees are going to tear up the sidewalks, these are the 5 trees that we're going to plant as a city, or 10 or 11 or 27, whatever the number happens to be, but being very prescriptive and relying on the science, because the cost of that tree may be only $100 to plant, but it costs us $250 every 5 years to maintain. And once every 20 years, we have to spend $8,000 replacing the sidewalk. So it's not really just the $100 to plant the tree. The second thing that I'd like to just kind of share is that to the extent that we think about tree requirements, and I know that in facilities, we talked a lot about partnering and education and looking to encourage homeowners to plant. To again, as we're thinking through that, to think about the economics. Because one of the things that I am surmising, but do not know for a fact, but I think through community outreach, we could help better evaluate, is that there are people that are cutting down trees because they're difficult to maintain, because they get into sewer lines, because whatever it happens to be, they've got a set of reasons. And so the moment we start forcing people, we're essentially imposing a tax on them that impacts how they think about other fees that might fund city services. So fees and taxes. So I said it in facilities, I'll kind of say it again, this concept of total cost and not just wishing away those realities that people face, but I would encourage us to make sure that we're very purposeful in the decisions that we make. I do want to say thank you, because the tree inventory, the website, is something that I like to show off. When people say, well, what's happening in San Leandro? I always brag about the tree inventory. And when I show it to people, they go, really? This is something that you guys are doing? And they're very impressed by the thoroughness. And I know that it's not 100% accurate, but we're talking about 99% accurate. That kind of level of information and transparency and an enabling of residents to make more informed decisions, very, very powerful stuff. So thank you for the hard work in that regard. I've got a motion from Councilmember Aguilar with a second from Councilmember Veras Walton. Seeing no further discussion, let's vote, please.
Councilmember Simon, your vote, please.
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes unanimous 7-0. Mayor Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Bolt, yes. Vice Mayor Bowen, yes. Councilmember Simon, yes. Councilmember Aguilar, yes. Councilmember Azevedo, yes. And Councilmember Viveros Walton, yes.
Okay, so we've got item 11, council request to schedule agenda items. Just for the benefit of the public, we have, as council members, received an email from the city manager guiding us through the process of submitting requests specifically for our upcoming council retreat. And so I just want to say thank you. Obviously, council members are free to offer ideas here publicly, but that will not obviate, it doesn't replace kind of the process that we have set up. So feel free to share your requests here in addition to sending them by email if you'd like. At this point in time, I'll go to council member Azevedo.
Yes. Am I on? Okay, yes. Okay, I have 3 referrals. Okay, my first term, I put 14 policies forward, and I'm starting out this term with 3 policies. My first policy, I sent them earlier, is the trap, neuter, release program for cats. We've discussed that before, and somehow it got stopped by the wayside. I don't know what happened to, but I want to reintroduce it because we need to partner with the vets and different nonprofits so we can get cats neutered and get them under control in San Leandro, because I hear that all the time about cats. I had somebody call me at 1 o'clock in the morning, there's a cat pooping in my backyard and the police won't do. So I hear about it all the time about cats, and we can even hear them outside. They're meowing like they're in heat. So that's important. So we get something on that. So that's the first one. The second one I brought up before also was to lock up all the dumpsters at all the strip malls and shopping centers in San Leandro. We have people going behind Bayfair, where Michael's is, I mean, not behind Bayfair, behind Michael's, throwing all the cardboard all over the place, going to Palma Plaza, throwing all the garbage all over the place, Greenhouse, throwing all the garbage all over the place. So we need an ordinance for that. And we've already had ACI do a presentation where they discussed it already. So they're willing to work with us on that. That's the second one. The third one is a new idea. I want the council to look into a designated area to light off small fireworks, possibly by the marina or another place, because we have a lot of fireworks going off in our city right now. So I believe that we should have a place where it's designated, maybe by the marina, like I said, where people can light off small fireworks, the Safe and Sane. The city can actually make money off it. They did it before. I talked to the former mayor, Pauline Cutter, about it, and the schools used to, a nonprofit, and they used to make money off it. So I believe the city can make money off of it. I mean, it won't be enough to fix our roads, $200 million, but I think we can make money off of it. And then the police could have the options to focus on the big fireworks going on in the neighborhoods. I know we got to be considerate for pet owners and everything, but I think if we had a designated area, the police could focus on other areas where the big fireworks are going off. Those are my 3 referrals. Thank you.
Councilmember Viveros Walton, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to alert both the public and my colleagues of 4 items that I submitted, but one of them is not going to be included because it's already going through the process. But I just wanted to verbalize them. They were submitted in writing earlier today. But my first item for the council prioritization session is 3 of them are relating to housing related issues. One of them is limit rent increases between 2.5 and 5% or 75% of the most recent 12-month increase on the CPI, whichever is lower. So this would be a rent stabilization ordinance. This would exempting single family homes, condos built after 1995, as well as historic properties. I also submitted a proposal to draft a just cause eviction and tenant protection ordinance. In the language that I submitted, it has a lot more meat to it, but in terms of the council item, in terms of the what will be in terms of the spreadsheet that we'll be talking about, it will just be this title. The third one is to draft a tenant anti-harassment ordinance. Again, in the submission that in my submission, it included a lot more detail, but in terms of today's, for today's purposes, I'll just note the titles. And then finally, I did want to just note that I also submitted one, and I wanted to give props to Councilmember Simon, who during facilities came up with the great idea of Lake Chabot being open one way heading west towards Oakland. And I actually submitted that, and the city manager alerted me that it's already going through the process through facilities. So there's no need for it to go through the council prioritization session. So those were the 4 items that I submitted, but only 3 will be for discussion on February 1st. Tenant anti-harassment, rent stabilization, somewhere between 2.5 and 5% or 75% of CPI, exempting the units that I just mentioned, as well as a just cause eviction and tenant protection ordinance. Thank you.
Councilmember Aguilar, please.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. Just for clarification, Brian had suggested TNR program. Is that something, I remember volunteering with the SPCA in Dublin, and they said that we have a TNR contract in place with them, with San Leandro. Trap and release.
Trap, neuter, release. So, city manager, are you aware?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Aguilar. My recollection is the same as well, but from what I'm understanding, Councilmember Acevedo would like more than what we're currently doing because his constituents feel that there still is a problem.
Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify what.
Okay, so I'll offer a few quick examples. City manager and I have been in discussion about these. They've not been formally submitted yet. First one is I'd like to see, under economic development priority, I'd like to see us add at least 1 individual to the economic development team. I'd like to see that discussed under infrastructure. We currently have a policy that 50% of all budget surplus goes to fund our retirement trust shortfalls. I'd like the second 50% to be reserved for roads in particular. So that would be the 50-50 split. With respect to the money that we're spending, I'd like to see the introduction of, I'll call them performance audits, contract audits. We've had some situations where some projects got away from us. I think we would benefit from having the concept of either internal audit, contract audit, or something like that introduced explicitly. Under housing and homelessness, I think we should move forward with our efforts around rent control, but focusing specifically on our most vulnerable. And I'd like to see explicit exploration of means testing to make sure that we're focused on protecting our most vulnerable residents. For quality of life, I would like to, for the staff to explore the benefits of extending Alameda County's ban on multifamily unit smoking into the city of San Leandro, because we are not covered by the Alameda County ban on smoking in multifamily units. I'd also like to see the possibility of adopting legislation to address the boats that are docked at our public marina spaces, our public boat launches that are there for the public that are instead being used as private assets. I've been in discussion with 1 or 2 council members on this referral. In particular, I'd like the default energy service San Leandro to be changed to Bright Choice, which is 91% clean power and is a cheaper choice for San Leandro residents. Under public safety, I'd like to see the expansion of the traffic patrol division by either 50% or 100%. It's currently 2 individuals. I'd like to see it increased to either 3 or 4, but some kind of increase in response to community concerns. And then under governance, I think that it would be nice to look at charter revisions. If we are looking at going to update our charter, I think it's a good time to just take a close look and say, if there's one, if we want to do like if there are other changes that we want to make, let's go to our residents with one story at one time. Let's just get it all done so that we don't have to come and revisit the charter. There'll be other things to talk about, but I wanted you to know before I submit them formally in writing. Councilmember Bowen, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to do the same. I really appreciate you bringing up the smoking ordinance because I've also been getting emails about that as well. And this is in no particular order, and I'll be submitting it in the next 2 weeks before our next meeting. I would like for us, in 2022, Governor Newsom signed an Assembly Bill 2596 declaring Lunar New Year a state holiday, and I would like us to be able to recognize that in some capacity, either with an ANHPI celebration as we do for other holidays, or something for city staff members as well, because it is a state holiday. I would like us to look into some sort of light ordinance, as other cities have. It's a concern of many residents that I've been talking to, in particular, one that has come to, in particular, one specific area that, has come to the council meeting that many of my colleagues have heard about. But just ensuring that we do, that we address light the way that we have with noise. I would also like to look into some sort of ordinance. I know it's best practice for us not to have campaign signs out for certain periods of time, but if we could, ensuring that in some sort of ordinance, I think that could be helpful. I would also like to, I know as part of last year's referral, there were some referrals I made around childcare, and I wanted to specifically make sure to add some sort of workforce development pipeline for service providers, as well as potentially a grant program to start childcare centers or help them to connect with funding and enrollment. There's still a huge gap in childcare, and it's an economic development issue. We talked earlier about during the tree master plan, but some sort of greening program so that in partnership with the school district or businesses to make them more climate friendly and green. I would also like for us to, as a city, in the past, we have had the, I forget the name of it now. I sat on the committee. It was focused on community equity, but it was focused on DEI and whether or not the city was doing significant work around that. I think that it would be helpful for us to develop a framework of which how the city operates and how we make decisions. The ACTC has a really good program that I think we could model it on. I know that we have, as council members, need to be able to take the harassment training, but I would like us to actually take a very specific one on gender discrimination so that we don't continue to act in misogynistic ways. I would like us also to be proactive about community engagement. I think there's a disconnect between what we do at the city and what the community knows. And I know we have really built a robust social media presence, and the team has done a really great job. I think that there's a lot more that we could do around that. I would also like to see a sustainability advisory group for community members to be able to support the sustainability efforts that we have, because we obviously don't have enough resources, but I know that there are a lot of community members that do want to participate and be more active. And lastly, I would like us to look into support, some sort of nonprofit consortium in partnership so that they can help do so much of the work that we are trying to put forward in the city.
Thank you. And then I'll go to Councilmember Simon next.
Thank you. I've got 3 to present tonight. And the first one is Llewellyn Boulevard undercrossing that's beneath Highway 880, and Estudillo Avenue undercrossing beneath Highway 580. This would be safety improvements and beautification improvements. The Llewellyn underpass is a vital connector between districts 2 and 4 for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. It's also a link between the navigation center that will be coming online shortly, as well as BART and bus public transportation. There's no lighting, and there are layers of pigeon feces along the sidewalk, which has been in this case for most of the 25 years I have lived in San Leandro, except for one cleanup, I believe, about 7 to 10 years ago. This underpass at Llewellyn is just outside and directly adjacent to City of San Leandro limits. So the city would coordinate with Caltrans, Alameda County on a safety and beautification project to include permanent pigeon barriers, lighting and murals, something similar to what I have seen in other parts of the country, such as Chicago, where they have mosaic tile, murals, other things really uplift the community. And I believe this would really uplift those receiving services at the new navigation center, just located a few hundred feet away from this underpass, and who would be walking through this underpass if they needed public transportation to access the facility. Also, the Estudillo undercrossing, it does not have the bird feces issues. However, it does need lighting and it could use beautification. So I would like to include that as well. The second item would be a ordinance requiring front home trees and green space to help ensure the health, safety, and quality of life of San Leandro. This dovetails into the presentation we just heard on the tree master plan, but I would like for us to require people to have trees. And we can also address the issues I heard earlier about sewer laterals and things like that. We can roll that into there as well, because there are solutions to having trees, and I think it will help all of us. Also including a parcel tax similar to City of San Francisco to fund this, to make this happen. The third item I would like to do is a policy to replace dilapidated streets that do not meet city replacement criteria. This is example Wiley Street in District 3. There's no plan to fix those streets that are so far gone. And I would recommend annually, and this was actually presented by a consultant at a past facilities meeting, a city's consultant. Annually, a street would be chosen by a council member on rotation and then paid by annual unspent funds, or if the city moves forward with some type of partial tax or something to fund our huge liability on street improvements. Those are my three for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. So seeing no others, I'll move to item number 12, City Council reports. Seeing none, I'm going to move to item 13, which is adjournment. I'm going to take a little bit of liberty here because 4 years ago we had some dramatic actions at the United States Capitol. The thing that's interesting about that in particular is that some have characterized what we saw at the US Capitol as a sign of love. And so what I'd like to say is that I want to close this meeting in honor of President Carter. Because when I think about love and what leaders do when they show love, they show humility, they go out and help people. President Carter left the White House under very difficult circumstances, but then spent the next 50 years, approximately 45 years of his life, really making a difference throughout the world and in the United States, really demonstrating what it means to be a servant leader. And with his passing this, whatever it was, maybe 8 days ago now, 10 days ago, I did ask that all the city flags be lowered to half-mast. And so you have seen that here for the last week or so. And so in honor of President Carter, who I think demonstrated servant leadership, demonstrated what it really means to show love, I'd like to take 15 seconds of silence to just honor former President Carter.